The inversatility of Godzilla as a character is complete nonsense. For a long time, I had known about this, and I really debated going back and forth in my head about whether I was going to make a video on this, considering a lot of other people in the Godzilla community have already done a very good job tearing this down. But something last week kind of just snapped with me not being on my ADD medication, and I decided, you know what? We're gonna do this. I watched the original video, and I will be completely honest. It was extremely painful to watch through, and it was very difficult to tell if it was deliberate malice and willful ignorance of many parts of Godzilla's characterization throughout the years, or if it was just truly obliviousness and not understanding a lot of the things about Godzilla in the more recent movies. This is going to be a very different style of video to our usual ones, but it is still going to focus on Godzilla, the classic character he is, for the good, the bad, and everything in between, because he is truly the most versatile character in all of fiction. He's been a protagonist, he's been an antagonist, sometimes even within the same movie. I'd hesitate to say he is a hero and a villain, because in a lot of ways Godzilla exists outside that real gray scale of morality that we humans follow. He is something above and beyond that, because his actions are really above our ability to understand and comprehend, even if they benefit or harm us. Because he is truly just a force of nature. I wasn't really too sure where to start this whole thing off, but I guess maybe the best place to start off is actually the stories, and the success Godzilla has had over the past 70 years of quite a varied number of stories. There's a reason he's spanned 38 different movies, multiple TV shows, and once again, 70 strong years of making movies. Even just this year, we've had two completely different takes on Godzilla, both of which have been wildly successful. From Godzilla -1 for its deep story, focus on human characters over pure monster spectacle. The very complex themes of redemption and courage are always timeless and something I will always love to see. Godzilla has returned to form as the nuclear destroyer he was always meant to embody, to wreak doom upon humanity for its hubris at harnessing a power it never fully understood. Meanwhile, smash cut 4 months later, we have Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. A gloriously simple plot of a Godzilla and Kong tag teaming up to face the Mad Ape Titan Scar King's quest to overthrow Godzilla and his forced subservience of Shimo, the primordial Titan. This is a movie that Takashi Yamazaki, the absolute Giga Chad writer and director of Godzilla -1, praised. And the man who kicked off the MonsterVerse himself, Gareth Edwards, when he saw -1, said that he was jealous of just how much better the movie was than what he created. Not out of malice, but out of genuine love for the series, and he was happy someone was able to make a better film than he was able to do. If the studios and the creators can understand this, why is it that there are some of the content creators that don't seem to? Now, there also are a vast majority of content creators, the overwhelming majority more of them, that do understand this about Godzilla. He is not just one thing or another. He is not even two sides of the same coin. He's more like a 20-sided die with how complex and complicated he can be with his various iterations. But there are a narrow few that sometimes do worry me as to, is it willful ignorance or just truly complete obliviousness as to Godzilla's origin? And I truly hope it is the second part, so that we can just show them this is the true nature of Godzilla and help them to understand the true nature of Godzilla. If you guys are for that, please don't forget to subscribe for more, leave a like on this video, and comment your thoughts below. Because here we hope to shine a light of truth on Godzilla, the greatest character in all of fiction. I plan to cover him as a heroic figure and him as a villainous figure in two separate videos, really because they are very complicated on their own, and you can't really cram all of this into a single video. So we are going to be going over a bit of an abbreviated version of everything right now, and again, really going through and showing that he is not an inversatile character. From his origins as the nuclear destroyer who ravaged Tokyo in 1954, to the gravity-defying savior of humanity in 73 when he faced down Megalon and Gigan, to his revival as the Atomic Terror in 84, ending with his once again becoming a savior for humanity by destroying the very monster born of that which destroyed his predecessor. Even his reanimated horror from GMK, fueled by nothing but the souls of those destroyed by Japan in World War II to punish the modern world, to the very conflicted cybernetic melding of man, machine, and monster that came as a result of the Kiryu saga, who eventually did manage to understand humanity through one man, and even befriending him. Following on with the Monsterverse, giving us a very different take on Godzilla as an almost atomic protector, not of humanity, but of the world, maintaining balance for the planet that he cares for, befriending many other kaiju in the series, and will obviously go out of his way to protect humanity, as he does have an understanding and respect for us as a whole, but is not above going and destroying those who violate his ability to protect nature, protect the world, and those who mean harm to Earth. And then, as mentioned, the absolute Giga Chad Takashi Yamazaki with his revival of Godzilla's original, or at least one part of his original characterization, for no less than the 6th time in Godzilla -1. Every version of him is compelling and complicated for its own separate reasons. From the father protecting his adoptive son from a cosmic monster in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, as well as protecting him from humanity's mechas and facing the embodiment of the darkest, most corrupted and twisted version of himself in Godzilla vs. Destroyer. He has shown himself to be a very sympathetic character, especially in the Heisei era, when we see him as a dinosaur back in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, the Japanese soldiers honoring him for, even if indirectly saving them from the Americans, they show respect for him as they believe he is dying. You see him wounded, you see him bleed as a result of the shore bombardment. Not to mention, once again, the protection of an adoptive member of his own species in the 3 prior movies listed: Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, and Godzilla vs. Destroyer. In much the same way as John Wick, after his dog was ended by the bad guys in that movie, if you're gonna go after someone's family, adopted or blood, I'm gonna basically give the main character free reign to do whatever the heck they want to the bad guy, or at least the antagonist, because you don't mess with someone's family. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 is one of the few Godzilla movies that actually does paint humanity in somewhat of a negative light. Godzilla is shown to be the morally correct stance. He is protecting his own kind. He is protecting his family. And humanity is using that as an ambush to try to destroy Godzilla. There's a lot of reasons I love Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. I'm not going to get into all of them here because I can literally make an entire video on just that movie. But to even go back even further with Godzilla being sympathetic, in the original movie, the reason he destroyed Japan is because the atomic bomb tests wiped out his family, wiped out his home. He lost everything he ever knew, everything he ever cared about, which is why he went and he destroyed Japan in almost this confused state of rage. Because for all of his atomic destructiveness, he is not just the incarnation of the bomb. He is 2 sides of the same coin. Both the atomic destroyer itself, the Saurian avatar of nuclear annihilation that we've come to know him as, but also as the much lessened, unfortunately, significantly undershown state of him being the consequences of such nuclear power. Not just the destructive capabilities, but the people left behind, the future developments and consequences nuclear technology had, and what it means for the world going forward. Not just complete annihilation. Throughout the various continuities and incarnations across the Millennium, Showa, Heisei, Reiwa, and Monsterverse, he is shown to be a creature that has a vast array of different personalities, and they're all beloved for many reasons. In movies like Godzilla 2000, he only attacks humanity with escalatory levels of force after humanity first escalate. He only attacks tanks and jets after they escalate to using the full metal missiles, which are new armor-penetrating missile systems designed to break through Godzilla's tough armored exterior. Prior to that, he really was just walking past. He then turned his wrath on the tanks when they provoked him. GMK, he is the embodiment of Japan's past come to haunt them in the modern era. He is essentially an embodiment of divine punishment in many ways for Japan for their past sins. The Showa era showed the greatest development and depth to Godzilla over time, where he originally went from a scarred, mutilated, confused creature lashing out at Japan because he lost his home. He lost everything he knew and loved, and humanity was attacking him when he just went ashore. He didn't know anything of what happened or why it happened. Humanity irrevocably changed him, and yet we continued to hunt and try to destroy him. He actually voices this himself in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster during the conversation between Mothra himself and Rodan, when Mothra tries to convince him to stop Ghidorah. He says, "Why should I help humanity? They hate me just for existing. They come after me with their tanks and their missiles. Why should I save them?" And Rodan agrees. However, in the end, after Mothra goes to face Ghidorah on her own, and Godzilla knowing she stands absolutely no chance, he starts to change. He fights for something beyond just self-defense, for a greater cause. Even if he is not truly an ally with Mothra or Rodan yet, it is oblivion versus living with the humans that truly can't really harm him. They're more of an annoyance. And that began his gradual turning into a much more heroic figure. One who is able to not necessarily let the past go, but understand the continued cycle of aggression between humanity and monster is largely pointless. He ends up collaborating with the Jet Jaguar to face the Seatopians Megalon and the Space Hunter Nebula M's Gigan, driving them off, and later teams up with many of the other monsters on Monster Island to drive off and finally snuff out King Ghidorah and destroy all monsters. Keep in mind, that movie takes place canonically in 1999, whereas the final movie set in the Showa continuity, at least produced, was Terror of Mechagodzilla, which is set in 1973. So Godzilla, for at bare minimum nearly quarter of a century, lived in peace with humanity. This is to say nothing of his eventual characterization in the Monsterverse, where he is shown with a greater range of intelligence, of depth, capable of showing very complex emotions such as compassion for other monsters, mercy, understanding the difference between not all humans are necessarily his enemy. After Dr. Serizawa revives him with the thermonuclear warhead after the Oxygen Destroyer heavily wounded him, he understands Mark Russell and the others in the sub were with Dr. Serizawa. He saw Serizawa sacrifice himself to save him. He in many ways views that sacrifice in the same way he views Mothra's sacrifice later in the movie to empower him to finally be able to defeat Ghidorah, avenging both of them. He shows mercy to Kong after the two of them defeat Mechagodzilla, offering him terms of, "He may not listen to me, but I will allow you to live as thanks for helping me defeat Kevin's skull inside of that bucket of bolts, so long as you never leave the inner Earth. If you leave the inner Earth, it's on sight." Yeah, it's a bit of an aggressive form of mercy, but still a form of mercy nonetheless. That's the reason why Godzilla launches into an attack as soon as Kong comes out of the inner Earth in Godzilla Kong the New Empire, because Kong basically issues a challenge to "come fight me, bro," as the only way of getting Godzilla to come over there pronto. It was basically a violation of the terms of service that Kong agreed to. However, by the end of that movie, Godzilla does understand, even if Kong does not listen to him, he's not going to usurp Godzilla. Godzilla is clearly the stronger of the two, and both of them are out to protect, in many ways, humanity, though Godzilla is more concerned with the Earth itself. So long as humanity abides by the protecting Earth as well, they're okay on his terms. Kong will more or less always protect humanity, so long as humanity does not really step out of line. Him and Godzilla's goals do align, even if their methods may not always be the most similar. The point about characters like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man all being consistent, and that is what makes them work, that is not an idea that works for Godzilla. The main reason for that is what makes those characters is their ideology. It is their morality. It is the reason they fight for what they do. Peter Parker, with great power comes great responsibility. Superman, he's literally a big blue Boy Scout. He was raised by a very, very good, well-meaning family and was really just out to do what was right. Batman, he is there to prevent what happened to him to anyone else. Again, they are driven by this ideology. None of that applies to Godzilla, because Godzilla is not a character who acts and is driven by an ideology or a morality. Godzilla's consistency isn't an origin, it isn't an ideology, it isn't a morality. It is that Godzilla is an embodiment of a concept. And it is not simply a singular concept, it is a two-sided concept, one side of which unfortunately does get overlooked these days. And this is not even just something that is left behind by the audience itself, this is something that is left behind by the actual creators themselves. That is actually one of the reasons why the monster vs. Godzilla is actually a lot more faithful than people will give it credit for. The first being, yes, he is the nuclear destroyer, the embodiment of the destructive power such weapons can have. But the other part of that, and the often forgotten one, is he is the victim as well. He is an embodiment of the people who were left behind by such devastation, and the consequences that the opening of this Pandora's box had on the world. How do we live with what we have done? That second part of Godzilla is especially present in the modern versions of Godzilla. The consequences of the bombs, not just their destructive power, the people that were left behind, and the future developments in nuclear technology. This is something that has personally affected me every single day of my life, the nuclear evolution, because of its ability to heal, its ability to help build. I live within several miles of a nuclear reactor, so quite literally, this channel is brought to you by nuclear power. But much more personal than that is actually my mother. She is a breast cancer survivor, and she was able to beat breast cancer because of chemotherapy. I was a lot younger at the time, but the way that I kind of wrapped my head around it, because they explained it involved radiation, was basically little tiny Godzilla's atomic ray blasting the cancer cells to save my mother. And Monster vs. Godzilla especially has really followed that more positive development of nuclear power, going from destruction into something that can save lives, can help the world. Godzilla has in many ways truly followed the evolution of nuclear power from the destructive bombs to what it is today. If that doesn't speak of versatility, I truly don't know what does. That's one of the reasons why Godzilla can take as many forms as he has throughout all of the years, whether it is in TV shows, on the silver screen, in streaming services, or from suits to CGI. Godzilla is an incredibly versatile character. He's heroic, he's antagonistic, he's even downright villainous in several cases. And all of them work, because they're not trying to be the same thing. It is this versatility, this flexibility, this differentiation between all of the different parts of Godzilla that have given him this 70-year-long reign as the king of the monsters. For all the criticisms directed at the MonsterVerse for not understanding Godzilla's origin and true nature, this is something that the movies themselves have very, very heavily shown to not be the case. Quite literally, the start of the first movie in the MonsterVerse, Godzilla 2014, is a nuclear disaster at the Janjira nuclear power plant. This was caused by the Muto feeding on a nuclear power because it was specifically attracted there because it wanted more nuclear energy. This is also stated to be the reason why, despite Monarch having secured the facility for many, many years, they didn't end the male Muto in the chrysalis, because they did not know what would happen to all the radiation it had been consuming, it had been amassing over all of its years of feeding. They were extremely hesitant to do anything, because if they did something wrong, it could irradiate the entire area even worse than it was before. That's the reason why Bryan Cranston pulls out the Geiger counter and is surprised when there's nothing there. Later on in the movie, Dr. Serizawa specifically calls out the atomic bombings with the broken pocket watch. This, in addition to the later thought to use the nuclear warhead as bait to lure in Godzilla, the female Muto, and the male Muto, and destroy them with the pure blast force, in addition to the literal stock footage opening of the Castle Bravo tests, you know, the thing that caused the original Godzilla movie to be made with Lucky Dragon number 5. The reason why Dr. Serizawa voices opposition to the usage of the nuclear warhead is not just because of the nuclear taboo and that nukes are bad. It is that these are creatures that feed on nuclear power. They feed on radiation. If the blast force doesn't end them, all you have done is made them stronger. This is something that the sequel, Godzilla King of the Monsters, actually confirms to have been the case. The nukes wouldn't have done anything when Dr. Serizawa puts the nuke point blank in front of a weakened Godzilla. And all it does is it revitalizes him and it makes him stronger. So while he may not be the nuclear harbinger of doom a lot of people expect and almost wish he was, that really videos like what prompted this one to be made only perpetuate that misunderstanding. He isn't just the nuclear harbinger of doom. And I will also admit, I am a very big fan of Monster vs. Godzilla, for having grown up with the Showa and Millennium films and Godzilla 2000 being the first one that I ever saw. I do very much like the Monsterverse incarnation of the character. I like how different it is, and that it does still hold much of the core of what Godzilla is. Something that Shin Godzilla has shown, you take that core of Godzilla, but you rebuild it out in an entirely different way than what the original movie had, and even what -1 had. It still works. That's the biggest indictment of that entire idea by Blackarooni, that Godzilla is not versatile. He's an embodiment of a concept. You can strip away his origin, rebuild it anew, and end up in the exact same place, strictly because he is that versatile. Thank you guys for watching this. This may have been a bit more rambly than usual. I really wasn't sure how to handle this. Maybe someday, if you guys like this, we will go more step-by-step dissecting the entire video and kind of picking everything apart. But yeah, this was something to make. Again, thank you all. Please comment your thoughts below, subscribe for more if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and, share this out to your friends. If you ever see someone saying Godzilla isn't a versatile character, please, link this or any other videos of any of the other great Godzilla creators showing he is versatile. We've got many more projects in the works. We've got videos going over Godzilla as a heroic character, Godzilla going over him as a villainous character, why they both work for different reasons, and some of the things about them that actually don't work. Because for all Godzilla's versatility and flexibility, he's not rubber, despite being originally a rubber suit. He can't really bend every which way to become every individual thing. He does still need to keep that balance of what made him originally what he was. I want to thank you all. Have a nice day, evening, afternoon, or night, depending on where you are when you are watching this. I've been Max Allo, and long live the Kaiju King. I mean, truly nothing would make me happier than, in the end, I never lived to see the end of the Godzilla series. Long after I'm gone, there's still more movies being made.